Welcome back, random YouTube people. It's been about 6 months since we drained the water heater. In a comment on my other water heater draining video, somebody said, how come you didn't talk about a power flush? So that's what I'm here to do today, is we're gonna power flush this water heater. First, I'm gonna splice in some clips of my other hot water heater draining video, just so that we're all on the same page and you know how to drain the tank as well before we do the power flush. So here we go.
Subscribe. We drain the hot water tank every 6 months as recommended to flush out all the sediment buildup from the anode rod and all the hard water, flush it out of the tank, and then fill it with new water. We do this to keep the tank working like brand new, and we do this every 6 months to make sure that we don't have a leak. If you want to see a leak, go check out my other video where I installed the water heater because of a leak. Now I know what you might be thinking. The hot water heater is one of the major appliances in your home, and it can be quite intimidating when you look at it to see, can I do this by myself? And trust me, if I can do it, so can you. The only tools you're going to need for this is a garden hose and a flathead screwdriver. Step 1 of draining your tank is to turn everything off. Start by setting the water heater control panel to the off position. Locate the natural gas valve and turn it off. And shut off the incoming cold water valve. Step number 2 is to drain the tank. Start by opening the hot water on the nearest faucet. Next, grab a garden hose and attach it to the tank drain. Then, using a flathead screwdriver, open up the valve and let it drain. If you do not have a floor drain, you may need to empty this out into 5-gallon buckets. And of course, be smart. This is really hot water coming out of here. Probably don't want to touch it.
And I'm back. This is the part of the water heater draining process where we're going to power flush the system. All you do is turn the cold water on, let it go through the hot water heater. It's going to agitate the sediment at the bottom of the tank and continue to flush it out. So let's continue this process. Here's the next steps.
Now that your tank is completely empty, go ahead and open up the cold water valve again, and you'll wait a second and you'll hear the water going into the tank, and eventually you will see the water coming out of that garden hose. And you sit and do this for 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes. Just let it run through so that it pushes all the sediment out of the system and out through the hose and down into the drain. And that's really all you need to do to power flush your water heater. We're just going to turn on the cold water, let the water break up some of the sediment at the bottom of the tank, let that water flush through the drain that we already have open down into the drain in the floor, and you're good. If you want to, you can connect the line into a 5-gallon bucket and you can see the sediment that comes out. Now, my water heater is only a year old, and the anode rod inside the water heater is not going to have been broken up so much that we're going to see tons and tons of sediment coming out of this. But in your case, you might. So you want to replace your anode rod as well every 3 years if needed. Now, since we have the cold water line open, it has a lot higher water pressure than we would if we were just draining the tank. So you can see the water is kind of going beyond the area that I would hope that it would on my floor. In the future, I'm going to make a custom drain that's going to go right from the drain port of the water heater and go directly to the drain on the floor. You can see there's a drain already that's attached to the drain on the floor. This particular one is for my water softener. I'm going to do the same thing for the water heater so that when I do a flush like this, it's just going to go straight down into the floor instead of pooling around the drain on the concrete.
Man, that was easy. Power flushing your system is not hard, it's just an extra step in the draining process. Speaking of extra steps, here are the rest of the clips from my previous video on how to continue draining and starting up your water heater. Here you go.
Once your water heater is empty, go ahead and shut off the tank drain valve and disconnect your hose. Now we come to our last step, which I'm going to call turning everything back on. Start by making sure the controller is off. Do not try to light the pilot before the tank is full of water. If you do, you'll ruin your tank and who knows what else kind of problems. Go ahead and turn on the cold water. Right after you turn on the cold water, go to the furthest away faucet and turn on the hot water. Once the hot water heater is full of water and the line is pressurized, you'll see water start to come out of the hot water line. At this point, I would recommend you go open all the other hot water lines and make sure all the air is flushed out of those as well. Now go ahead and turn your natural gas back on. Then the next part comes turning it on. Every water heater tank should have instructions on how to light. I'm right here on the tank itself. So read these instructions carefully
and follow them for your specific hot water tank.
You'll even find some instructions on the controller itself. Press and hold the knob in the pilot position. Press the igniter button until the pilot lights. Release the knob when the light starts blinking. Now I found out that if you read the directions that this can take up to 90 seconds. So put the controller in pilot and press the ignition button several times until you start seeing the light flash blue. You guys hear that rumble? I just turned it to hot. The pilot light status is blinking blue, which means that it's a normal operation. You can see the pilot light on there. Now it's really roaring. It means it's heating the water. This will come back, well, maybe not back down here, but we'll test the water in probably a half hour to an hour to see if it's gotten warm. 45 minutes later. And there it is. You'll just have to trust me. I've got hot water running now. That was about 45 minutes or so. I mean, it's not scalding hot by any means, but it's warm. I take a shower in that. Probably not a bath, but it'll get warmer. So how can you keep it running great? There's a couple things you can do. The first thing is to drain your tank every 6 months. You do that every 6 months, it should get the sediment buildup in your tank and flush it out. That's one way to keep your tank from early deterioration on the inside. Another thing you're going to want to do is to replace the anode rod that sits inside the tank. The anode rod is a piece of metal that kind of sacrifices itself, so it will deteriorate without it eating your water tank itself. And you should replace the anode rod every 3 to 5 years. Probably to be safer, 3 years is the best. And let me show you where that anode rod is on the top of the water heater. Now they don't put it in a nice, easy, convenient place. We're going to pretend that my basement is finished and that's a solid wall there. The anode rod sits back here. To get that out, you're going to need a 1 1/16 socket. And this is a deep well socket that I have to replace the anode rod in my trailer water heater. And that's just going to stuff down the hole like this. And of course, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, you'll be able to pull that anode rod out and then put the new one back in and tighten it up. Following these simple maintenance steps will prolong the life of your water heater and keep your water heater producing warm water for many years to come. Because let's be honest, you don't want to have to replace this thing every other year. Thanks for joining me today. Hopefully this helps you in draining your hot water heater. And remember, click the like button, share it with all of your friends, comment, and most importantly of all, subscribe. Subscribe.